Did you know that nearly 1 in 5 adults will experience a mental health issue in their lifetime? Today, we're diving deep with Dr. Christina Bjorndal to unravel the secrets of harmonizing your body, mind, and spirit. Get ready to unlock your unique path to true mental and emotional well-being.
Welcome to the Spa Doctor Podcast, where we uncover the secrets about women's health and hormones.
I'm your host, Dr. Trevor Cates, naturopathic doctor, best-selling author, and founder of the Spa Doctor. Every episode, we reveal the best-kept secrets for achieving glowing skin, natural beauty, a healthy body, and a balanced mind. Are you ready to live your healthiest life? Keep on listening. Welcome to the Spa Doctor Podcast. I'm Dr. Trevor Cates, and today we're peeling back the layers of mental and emotional health because it's not just about surviving, it's about thriving in every sense. I'm excited to introduce Dr. Christina Bjorndal, a powerhouse in the world of naturopathic medicine and a warrior who's walked the path of mental health challenges herself. She's faced depression, anxiety, bulimia, bipolar disorder, and even cancer, and emerged not just as a survivor, but as a healer, author, and leader. Dr. Bjorndal is here to share her wisdom on integrating mind, body, and spirit to create a life of wholeness. So let's dive into this conversation that promises to be as healing as it is inspiring. Chris, it's so great to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's so great to have you and see you. And I'm excited to dive into today's topic around a holistic approach to mental health. And let's start by talking about how a holistic approach helps mental health. And holistic being mind, body, spirit, incorporating all of that together. But your specialty is mental health. So how is this possible? How does it help?
It helps because if you want to just visualize a table, it's got 4 legs. And the 4 legs are going to be standing for number 1, physical level, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And for that table to be steady, you have to have an emphasis or putting some importance in your well-being in each of these 4 areas. And I find and that's a holistic approach. I mean, that's it in a nutshell. People give lip service to mind, body, spirit. But what does that really mean? It means you're paying attention to the physical aspects of health, which we can talk about, your thoughts, the mental, your emotional health, and then your connection to something greater than yourself. And I'm using that to define spirit.
When it comes to mental health, how does addressing with a holistic approach differ from conventional medicine?
So conventional medicine, they're really focusing on that one arm or that one leg, which is the physical level only. So they're using medications primarily if you're seeing a psychiatrist. Now, if you're talking to a psychologist or a therapist, counselor, they're then going to hopefully discuss with you your thoughts and your emotions and that spiritual piece of the puzzle. But our Western system is really disconnected from the whole, and it's divided into parts. So if you've got a mental health issue, you're going to see the psychiatrist, and they're just going to talk to you about how to make your brain function using medication. But you and I both know that your brain functions from nutrition and basically all the building blocks that our body needs, the amino acids, the hormones, everything plays a role. It's not just medication. And not that I'm against it, just that it's not the primary thing.
Medications can play a role, but you talk about this in your book that a lot of times people just jump to taking a pill, right? To just jump to that without doing these other things. So how would your approach be different?
Mm-hmm. So what I want to emphasize is that sometimes you may need to take a pharmaceutical medicine. However, you have to look at the root cause. And that's one of the big things about the medicine that we practice is that we are emphasizing and putting the primary importance on what is causing this in you and understand that there can be more than one root cause. So in my own case, I took psychotropic medications and I felt somewhat better. It alleviated the suicidal ideations that I was experiencing. But when I went off that medication, I ended up in exactly the same place where I started. So it didn't actually solve the problems that I was having. And that requires a more deeper, comprehensive approach like we take in naturopathic medicine, looking at all the physical building blocks that are required. Nutrition, sleep, movement, and stress management are the 4 pillars of that one arm of the physical level.
Can you share a bit about your journey, your story, and how you got into being interested in and having this focus?
Yeah, and the whole thing has been my journey. The whole reason I became a naturopathic doctor was because I was sick and tired of being tired and sick all the time, it felt like. So basically, in a nutshell, I have had a lot of labels given to me: anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder. I've had 3 suicide attempts, 6 psychotic events. I've been in the psychiatric hospital for a year of my life. I've also had an eating disorder. And the interesting thing is, you might think, wow, that's a lot. It all started with 2 incidents. One, I am adopted, so there's this initial onset of trauma at that time. There's something that we talk about in naturopathic medicine. It's called intergenerational trauma. So that might be something we come back to and talk more about another day. And then the other piece of the puzzle is I was prescribed antibiotics for acne. I had really bad acne in my teenage years. And guess what that did? That disrupted my gut microbiome. So there's a big connection between the gut and the brain. So after I took those antibiotics, and it wasn't just a 10-day course, it was more like a 10-month course, I developed the eating disorder and then the anxiety and then everything else from there. My journey's been long. I spent a lot of time in the Western world. I was on 5 psychotropic medications when I decided, and this is when I had a suicide attempt. When I came out of that coma, I'd realized, first of all, I was not happy. I was even more depressed that I was still here. Number 2, I decided I need to figure out another way to navigate my life, because the way I'm doing it over there on that Western side I'm not getting better. And that's my message. Listen, absolutely. If you want to take medication, take it. If you get better, that's the key. And if you stay better, if you don't need the medication. And those 2 things weren't happening for me. I wasn't getting better and I didn't stay better off of it. I went to see a naturopathic doctor and my life turned around and here I am. And eventually I made that career change back to high school at 33 to become a naturopath, because I didn't have the science prerequisites. And it's been a journey, but here I am, 57, loving it, and so happy that I did that. So happy. It was the best decision for me. Not easy, but the best in the end.
Well, I think if people are listening, watching, and they're struggling, a lot of people are struggling. We know that a lot of people are struggling with feelings of isolation, loneliness, mental health issues, and the pandemic has made all of this worse. And so thank you for sharing this. So people might be listening and think they're really struggling or they're trying to find a way out of that. And I do think it's important to know that there is hope, that there are answers, there are solutions, and maybe they haven't found that yet. Or maybe somebody's listening and they're thinking, gosh, I know somebody who really needs this information, because this is about supporting one another, right? We're not all in these silos, that we're in this together. And so how do you feel, what do you think is really important for people to understand about community, and how important is that in our well-being?
It is. It's always so hard to say what's the most important step, right? And in my book, I talk about the 10 steps to mental wellness. This step, though, the connection and community has to be bolded, underlined, highlighted. It is so important because, like you just said, we are all in this together. We come into the world connected by an umbilical cord. We are connected to each other. We're energetic beings. So I'll illustrate this by a story. There was a woman whose son was depressed. He's just about 16 years old. And this is a tough time in boys, sometimes 16, hormones. Anyway, he was not coming out of his room, not functioning, not going to school. Would not go to appointments. The mother was beside herself, as any mother would be. So all she could think to do was show up every morning with a sandwich and put a sandwich by his bed. Some days he ate it, some days he didn't. Eventually he turned the corner after several months, if not a year. And she said to him one day, what changed? You're so much better now. And he said, Mom, the sandwich. You showed up for me. You never gave up on me. You showed up for me every single day with a sandwich, and you never judged, criticized. How parents can get. Come on, get on a bed now, right? Like the love that you might not think you're doing she thought she was doing nothing. but she showed up and so we have to be there for another. And I can tell you, people in your life who are depressed and you're reaching out to them, please don't take it personally that they haven't reached back to you. Asking a depressed person to reach out, it's like asking a blind person to see. We are physically incapacitated in that ability because we simply do not want to be here on the planet. And we don't think we're worthy of your time. So why would we contact you? So don't stop at one phone call and really if you really want to connect, knock on their door, show up. So community and connection, I have to tell you, for me, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for community and connection. I wouldn't.
What are the other things what are some of the other steps? Some of the other things that you think are so crucial?
I don't want to gloss over the nutrition piece. We want to make sure that you understand, first of all, if it's depression, anxiety, eating disorders, OCD, ADHD, whatever label we're talking about here. First and foremost, we want to make sure that we're visiting or correcting the right macro system. So there's 3 in your body. You've got, typically people know serotonin, dopamine, GABA. So we have those. And then we have our hormones. And then we have our organs of detoxification. So I already touched on one of the organs of detoxification when I mentioned the gut microbiome. Your stomach, your colon, that's a major organ of detoxification, your liver. So in my case, and when I'm working with patients, that's my first thing. Which organ of which macro system do I need to support in this individual? And often it's all 3. Then we put those building blocks in place, nutritionally speaking, but then the movement piece. And then we want to, obviously sleep is a really big piece of this puzzle too. And then stress management. So I've gone off on a tangent, but I want to answer really one of the most important things you asked me is I think it is working on your thoughts. Working on this voice that we all have that's talking to us, that might be saying little things like, you didn't quite do that right, or you're not good enough, or that you don't look very good, or however the dialogue is. So my inner critic had the stage and a megaphone was constantly telling me that I'm not good enough. And that's exhausting. So learning to manage the mind that I had and to settle in to the body, get out of this area. And a simple way is I just call it breath work because people seem to get a little nervous when we use bigger words like meditation or mindfulness or these kinds of somatic experiencing. Simply just acknowledging that there's a thought that's not serving you. Can you settle into the breath and not follow that thought around and around? So that's very important. And I'm working on that. I've been working on that for at least 25 years. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Somebody was talking to me yesterday about what if we, instead of always leading ourselves with our minds, our brains, what if we lead with our heart? Like, what if we always show up with our heart first and then our mind, even for ourselves, right? Sometimes some people, it's easier to show up with our hearts open and warmth and to other people more so than ourselves. But what if we were able to do that for ourselves as well?
That's right. And what if we were able to listen to this voice? Because you've got this voice that's coming from the heart as well. And it's whispering to you. The reality is most of us are listening to this voice. And this voice is coming from the place of fear, often, the egoic mind. And this voice is coming from the place of love, care, and compassion. And we get scared. Even when I decided to make my career change, that whisper from my heart came up constantly. Go back to school and become a naturopathic doctor. What was the next thought right after that? Wow, you can't do that. And all the 500 reasons why I can't do that, right? But I didn't listen to this voice. I ended up continuing to listen to the voice of the heart. So if you're game, we can do a quick exercise about that. Do you want to?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah? Okay, so and people who are listening, you can do this along with us. It's really simple. So we're just going to have a conversation with your heart. So you start by placing your hands over your heart and we just close our eyes to get the ego out of the way. So we close our eyes and we just take a breath in and exhale. And then I'm going to ask a question and I'll get you to repeat it, Trevor, and then the answer. So the first one is just heart. Show me where you are.
Heart, show me where you are.
And then just share if there's anything, color, word, phrase. There can be nothing
I just get right here.
right here. That's beautiful. So another breath here. And exhaling. Heart, will you ever lie to me? Yes or no?
Heart, will you ever lie to me? Yes or no? No.
Heart, have I always followed you? Yes or no?
Heart, have I always followed you? Yes or no? No.
Heart, how do you feel when you hear, I haven't always followed you?
Heart, how do you feel when I say I haven't always followed you? Sad.
Sad. So we'll take a breath into the sadness. Just breathe in and exhale. And just ask, heart, why do you feel sad?
Heart, why do you feel sad? Because I am here for you.
Because I am here for you. That's beautiful. Heart, can you forgive me for not always following you? Yes or no?
Heart, can you forgive me for not always hearing you? Yes.
Yeah. That's it. So beautiful.
Aw,
So
makes me cry a little tears.
Right. Usually let's remove people to tears because we all have that inner guidance, if you will, inner compass, inner voice, and we all don't always listen to it. And so two things from this. A quote that you can use from Joseph Campbell to guide you is, the heart must usher the mind into the zone of revelation. And it's just so beautiful. It's just what you were saying. Lead your life from a heart-centered place, not an ego-centered place. The ego is not a bad thing. It's just that it's based in fear and we want to live our lives in love. And this comes back to the nervous system, right? There's only two states to your nervous system: sympathetic or stressed, parasympathetic or relaxed. And everybody's all about digestion, but nobody's talking about how digestion doesn't happen, or nutrition, what food to eat, what diet to plan to follow. But nobody's talking about the state in which you're in when you're eating that food. You've got to be in a parasympathetic state. And most people are to swallow, eating on the run, stressed to the max. That was one thing I wanted to say. And the second thing I want to say around that is, here's how you use this in your life. You start like this: heart, brown pants or blue pants, chicken or beef, or if that's offensive to vegetarians, then carrots or quinoa. All things, no consequences are going to happen untoward if you just start tuning in. But start with the small things, because then when you get those hits, call your mother. Don't take that drink, right? You'll be more inclined to listen.
Yeah.
Tune into that vibration. It's within you.
It truly is. And what it feels like to me as I'm doing that, it feels like coming home and the true sense of coming home. Some of us haven't always had the best home environment, right?
Yes. But you're always in your body. And
right,
that's your
it's
home.
here. It's this sense of returning to our true nature, to our essence, and that wisdom that's in us. And unfortunately, we've been taught to ignore that, and to that what's going on inside that gut instinct is not true. And I think a lot of times with conventional medicine, people go in and say, I think there's something wrong with me. And the doctors, no, your lab work's all normal. You're fine. You can go now. And they're like, oh, wait a minute. I thought I was being told that something's wrong with me. So it must be wrong. And so it's things like that just make us believe that we have to think from here rather than here.
Yes, absolutely. And even that's another podcast we could do about discussing lab work, because what is normal anyways? That's a whole thing. No,
Yeah.
It's just crucial. And understand that I tapped on the word intergenerational trauma. So we are the culmination of the 7 generations that go before us. Mark Wallen has a lovely book called It Didn't Start With You. So understand that when your grandmother was pregnant with your mother, you were present as an egg in her ovary. So the experiences, the traumas, the upsets, the emotional disturbances, not just on the woman, actually. There was a study recently done in Sweden. They studied the men, the fathers, their mental health. They were father depressed, pregnant mother fine, baby still came out with effects of living in an environment energetically with one partner, the male, with mental health issues. And so I like to mention that because women, we bear a lot of the guilt around things. And it's not just about us. It takes two here. So it's very powerful to look a little bit beyond and deeper than just, okay, I have to take Prozac for the rest of my life, because that's just not simply not true.
Right. And I think this oftentimes comes up if someone's, yeah, my life's been pretty good, or I already talked about all these things in therapy, so why am I still not well? Right. There are other things that you're talking about that we might not even be aware of because our families didn't talk about it. Or someone's adopted like you were. You don't know. So I think that's really important. And yeah, we could do a whole podcast on that. Maybe we'll have to do that another time if people want you to come back to do that. I personally think that's fascinating. But let's talk some more about nutrition, because I know we really want to talk about this. What are the things that we need to think about with nutrition and mental health?
Mm-hmm. So understand that the neurotransmitters, so two big neurotransmitters, serotonin and dopamine, they are derived from essential, so keyword being essential, amino acids, so protein. And so essential means you can't make them in your body. You have to get them from the outside. You know how we upgrade our iPhones? They have, I don't know, iPhone 250 at this point in time, probably. I don't know what number they're on, but we need to upgrade the human. And one upgrade we would get is the ability to make tryptophan and make phenylalanine. These are the two essential amino acids that go on to make serotonin and dopamine, respectively. So first off, look at your nutrition. I was deficient in tryptophan. I was not getting enough from my nutrition. So how could I make serotonin? This is a slam dunk. You're going to be depressed. You don't have the nutritional building blocks to make it. And then it's not just about having tryptophan, because tryptophan can go to serotonin, but can also go down another pathway if you're stressed. So managing the stress piece is, I know it's just so important. And not just your physical sort of level of stress, but your financial stress, your emotional stress, the thought stress that you have. So that's very important. But the cofactors then, if you've got tryptophan, great. But what if you can't convert it? You got to get it to 5-HTP, and then you got to get it to serotonin, then you got to get it to melatonin. So there's nutritional cofactors, B5, vitamin C, zinc, iron, all of those are important as well. If you don't have those, you might not make it to serotonin and you're going to be depressed. And I think our just basic nutrition is, we really got off track in our society, really got off track. So think about growing, if you can, just start with one seed, one pot in your yard. Start growing some food yourself. Stop eating out of boxes, cans, packages. Michael Pollan said, we've given up 2 hours a day for screen time. And what have we given up? We've given up exercise, and we've given up cooking together in the kitchen. Our modern way of life is actually killing us.
And I think that it's shocking to me that nutrition isn't a part of going in to see a therapist or mental health overall. It's part of science. It's part of our physiology, to human physiology, to need these nutrients for our mental health. And I find that shocking that people with mental health issues, nobody talks to them about nutrition and how these are essential amino acids you have to get from your diet. And if you're not, then there's nothing that you can do to replace these. And the medication is only going to create side effects. It's not going to address the root causes. So how does someone know if they have a deficiency? Is it just a matter of looking at your diet and saying, I'm not getting certain things in my diet?
You can look at that, but you can also look at your symptom picture, right? So if you're checking off all the boxes for major or moderate or mild depression, right there, that should be the first go-to. If someone is being clinically diagnosed with a mental health issue, the first question should be, what are you eating? How are you sleeping? What's your stress? Basically, are you moving your body? And what's your community like? Those questions. But basically, the first thing is, okay, you're feeling this way. Let's get rid of that. Here, let's write out a prescription. Let's get you on medication so that you don't, so God forbid you should feel that way. This is another problem we have in our society. Nobody wants to acknowledge that the emotions that we hold within us you're the home for them. So depression, I worked with a renowned teacher, Dr. Gabor Mate. And when I had a one-on-one with him, he said to me, why so much depression, Chris? And I said, this is why I'm here to talk to you, to figure that out. And he says to me, what emotion have you depressed? What emotion have you pushed down? And I said, gosh, I don't really know. And then he said, how are you with anger? And then I said, I don't do anger. And then he said, let's go there. So what have you disowned? What have you disowned in you? As I'm asking the listener this, because for me, I didn't do anger. I disowned that. And we went into it further, and I won't just for the sake of the time on the podcast, but the point that I'm trying to make is you can only keep something down before it's going to pop up and want to be looked at. So sadness, anger, depression, they don't want to be healed. They want to be held. They want to be held by you. Why? Because you're their home. And the minute I stopped hating the fact that I was depressed and hating the fact, talk about disowning, I totally disowned bipolar disorder as well. The minute I stopped hating those aspects of myself and started loving them, I've been the most emotionally stable I've been in my entire life. So you can't walk through the world at war with yourself. Yourself is not against you. So get on side with you. That's the best way I can summarize it.
Yes. Sometimes it's easier said than done. But I do think it's important that we just bring this up. So bringing this into our awareness, sometimes we're not quite ready to go there. But at least I think that awareness can be that first step. How do you feel people make their way into this? Because this can be really scary. The idea of embracing something like anger when you've been taught your whole entire life that you can't be angry, that's a bad thing. That's going to make other people upset. And if you're angry, then other people get angry. And then if they're angry, then you get beaten, like whatever it is. It's such a trigger for people. So a lot of times people just shut down when they hear that, right?
Yeah, for sure. So I want to be clear here. I'm not saying go out and rage on everybody. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying we want to be able to feel what we feel and not go to thought. We just want to be with that emotion as it rises. Jill Bolte Taylor said that emotions themselves are only going to live within you for about 2 minutes, but it's our thoughts that fuel them, in some cases to last a lifetime. In the case of resentment, bitterness, people who are holding people out of their hearts, not forgiving people. So you want to stay with the body, but how basically awareness is the portal to the soul. Awareness is the portal to the soul. So you might have something to work on, either in the physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual realm, if you've been diagnosed with a mental illness, number one. And number two, what you want to do with it is you want to pay attention to when you're activated, when you're triggered or irritated. It can be as subtle as, oh, whoa, why did she look at me like that? To losing your temper because your son's not ready to go to school on time because he didn't pack his backpack on time and you told him 50 times, and then you're losing your temper. Maybe I'm the only mother that ever got upset there. I don't think I'm alone in that, but that's a trigger. So you got to pay attention to, well, what's going on with me and what's perhaps unhealed in me that I have to tend and befriend. So that's the journey. And listen, I'm on it with you, walking it every day. It's not like I walk around like I'm some Rinpoche Buddhist master who never gets activated or triggered. Let me tell you. But
life is certainly in session, right? It's always giving us opportunities for growing and healing, right? It's an ongoing journey. Let's
Hope that helps. Hope that was helpful to say that.
100%. So let's go through some lifestyle changes that people can make, some like practical things having to do with food, movement, sleep, stress management. Can you guide us through some of these things that people can start doing to make a difference in mental health?
Sure. So with food, let's actually just move to what the liquids. So first, let's just get water in there. Most people are not drinking enough water, clean water, preferably, please. No plastic. Okay, get rid of the plastic. We didn't even touch on the environmental aspects here as well. So food, let's just see if you can work on your relationship with sugar by breaking up with it slowly, because it's also a drug, if you will. So eliminating or reducing that relationship. Let's get some vegetables in there. Let's get some healthy protein. So my next book I'm working on is all about this eating piece of the puzzle. I have a little book called The Essential Diet, Eating for Mental Health. That's something you can check out. But basically shop around the perimeter of the store and chew your food slowly. Talk about, and I talked earlier about the state in which you're in when you're eating. That is very important. So chew your food and allow digestion. It takes time for you to get that full signal. There's lots going on hormonally with respect to food. It's a big issue in our society tied in there with mental health.
Hormones and food and mental health. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on that? Because we do talk a lot about hormones, but people may not necessarily understand the connection with mental health.
Yeah. So, yeah. And there's the big hormones. So there's two sort of food hormones, leptin and ghrelin. And then there's insulin, estrogen, and thyroid. So those 5 hormones play, and there's triads within. So the insulin, estrogen, leptin triad is really important because what's happening is we have a leptin. So a lot of people are aware of insulin resistance. People haven't quite heard the term as often about leptin resistance. And that's basically the signal to tell us, hey, that we're full, that we don't need to continue on this eating pathway. So it's very complex, but sugar is one of the main culprits in this, criminals, if you will, in this play that we're in with our body and the hormones that we're trying to balance. So I think just to keep it simple, I just mentioned the thyroid. That's another big hormone, and that plays a role in mental health as well. And that plays a role in weight and nutrition. But the other hormone that's a culprit here is cortisol. So our stress hormone, and we've talked about stress, how we have to be mindful of the state in which we're eating. And ultimately, this is also very important because cortisol inhibits your thyroid. And often it's just another one where people get misdiagnosed all the time. And everyone, just like they get misdiagnosed mental health wise and get prescribed antidepressants or anti-anxiolytics, people get quickly prescribed Synthroid or a medication for the thyroid without asking what's going on in your life. And if you calm the stress, you take your foot off the gas of the gas stress pedal, thyroid resolves. There's also nutritional cofactors over there. So I've probably gone on a tangent, but basically just understand that there's a hormone symphony that's involved in weight.
It is an intricate thing of trying to explain this whole connection with hormones and food. But I really think it's important for people to understand that there is this connection between our hormones and our mental health and the foods we eat and the nutrition that we have, and that they're not separate things. They are interconnected. And so if we're not feeling sharp, we're not feeling focused, we're not feeling emotionally balanced, then we need to take a look at our hormones and we need to take a look at the foods that we're eating and the nutrition that we're getting. This is essential. And if we're not getting this piece, we're truly missing a piece of the puzzle.
Huge piece of the puzzle.
Okay, so we've talked about food And let's talk, what's the next part of lifestyle that you think is crucial?
And the other thing back to food I want to mention is those amino acids, right? We can't leave out our buddies, tryptophan and phenylalanine, right? Protein, just think protein okay? And then the
So
next,
just to reiterate, so amino acids, so protein breaks down into amino acids make up protein. So that's the biggest way how we get those nutrients. And our diet is eating protein. So I think some of the people that might be at particular risk for this are, of course, people that are eating a very processed diet, not getting a healthy balance of nutrients, but also people that are vegans or vegetarians that are not doing it in a way that's balanced, where they're not getting enough protein. So I think that's another huge component to that. And sometimes it's hard to know how much is the right amount of protein.
it is. And I didn't mention that I was a vegetarian and my mental health was the worst, but I didn't have a lot of vegetables in my diet, right? They were hard pressed to be there. So I was a carbitarian, and it was difficult. And the frustrating part for me was nobody asked me what I was eating. Not one person, except for a naturopathic doctor. So then I would say it's sleep is the next piece it's crucial. And then I would put community and exercise together. So preferably you're doing movement that you enjoy, that you feel good doing with your body, with somebody that lights you up or lifts you up or whatever it is. I'm a very active person. You pick what works for you. There's so many things to try nowadays. And so those would be the next areas. And then after that, it's working on your thoughts and this emotional body and connecting these two pieces. Okay. We're not just we don't just have little knees under our chins walking around. We have this whole body from your tip of your head to the bottom of your feet. Let's connect those two together. And most of us are just living here.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So food, stress management, community, sleep. What about environment? Because you said we haven't touched on that.
Yeah, so the environment, I speak of it from three perspectives. Quality of the air, food, and water. So understand there's chemicals in everything. These chemicals can block receptors. So you might be making those neurotransmitters no problem, or the hormones no problem, but there's a bouncer blocking the door and the hormones can't get in. So that's important. So that's happening if everything is balanced. Your hormones are balanced, your neurotransmitters are balanced, and you're still feeling depressed. We might want to take a look at this environmental piece, which connects back to the organs of detoxification. So that's number one. Number two is this idea that we've touched on of genetics versus epigenetics. So genes load the gun, lifestyle pulls the trigger. So your genes are not your destiny. It's your lifestyle that turns that gene on or off. And the third piece is this idea of neuroplasticity, which I've been touching on, which is the idea that you can create new neural pathways in your brain. Your brain is not a fixed lump of cement, okay? It's more like plastic. So even though I had a major highway built for the negative thought process, constantly criticizing myself every step of the way through my life, I have had to build this other highway over here, which is a little more encouraging, a little more compassionate, a little more supportive of this entity that we call Chris. So you can walk through the world beating yourself up, as I did, and that served me to become an overachiever, which then got me burnout. Or you can be kind to yourself and supportive and talk to yourself the way you would talk to your newborn child. Whisper sweet nothings in your own ear. So this neuroplastic piece is powerful. There's a lovely book called The Brain That Changed Itself by Norman Doidge. He's a Canadian psychiatrist. And he looks at all kinds of brain conditions, from Parkinson's to mental health to MS. So the message at the end of the day is there is hope. There is so much opportunity for you to regain whatever it is you may have been told you've lost.
Amazing. And so I think with the environment, going back to that, I think when we look at the environment, there are the toxins in the environment, and then there's also just who's around us, right? The environment in which we live. So you just encompassed all of that in what you just shared. But I do want to reiterate the different aspects of that and to not miss one or the other that we need when we look at what our environment is, what is around us, what toxins are we getting exposed to in our food, our water, our air, our personal care products, our skincare products are a big part of this exposure. The products we use to clean our homes, what are we putting in our homes? All of those types of environmental things are crucial to the health of our hormones because of these endocrine disrupting chemicals. And that impacts our mental health. And then also the environment of the people that are around us. Like, what is our environment around us? What are we looking at? What is it impacting us on a day-to-day basis? And that impacts our mental health. It also impacts our microbiome. So because other people's microbiome impacts our microbiome, which is such a fascinating thing. But our environment is such a crucial piece.
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought up that piece about the people piece. I have a little blog I just put it up recently. It's called Energy Givers and Takers. And it looks at this piece around the toxic piece about people. And I mean, we want to grant people grace. Obviously, everyone's wounded. Every soul is suffering. Show me a human on the planet that isn't got something that they're carrying. Remember that intergenerational piece too, right? So I think the more grace and compassion, obviously, but yes, and as somebody, again, I've had difficult diagnoses. Bipolar disorder type 1 has not been an easy condition to navigate, nor has it been easy for people to live with me, right? So I get that I'm very sensitive to this, but I think it's so important because boundaries also come up here. And that's you have to be able to have boundaries, healthy boundaries and kind boundaries with people that you may need to set some space with in your life.
So I want to really emphasize that we've been talking about this holistic approach to our mental well-being and what you've shared about all the different aspects that play a role in this and that we want to look at these things holistically and how crucial that is to improving our journey and where we are and whether that's where we're really struggling with a diagnosis, with a mental health diagnosis, or we just want to show up in our fullest and that we want to be a better parent or coworker or spouse or whatever it is, that we really want to look at this holistically. And so I really appreciate you coming on, Chris, and sharing your wisdom with us. Will you tell people where they can learn more about you?
Yeah, sure. So the usual suspects, right? Instagram, Facebook, just Dr. Chris Bjorndal. But I do want to mention, please, technology is another big piece that we didn't touch on, and it's not helping our mental health at all. And then my website is drchristinabjorndal.com. And you can find that blog there. You can find the first chapter to my book there. And I just really appreciate you so much, Trevor.
Oh my gosh, I appreciate you too. And keep up the great work that you're doing and sharing your own journey, that vulnerability that you have, and showing people a path forward. We have enough people that put up a fake facade and that trying to make everything look like it's all normal and that we don't have any problems. So I appreciate your authenticity and your deep dive into your own journey and being a shining light for others. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. If you found today's episode valuable, be sure to subscribe to the Spa Doctor podcast and leave a review. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Spa Doctor podcast. See you next Sunday for a new episode on your journey to living your healthiest life at any age.